Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we're going to review the book A Smile as Big as the Moon. The official extended title is A Smile as Big as the Moon, A Teacher, His Class, and Their Unforgettable Journey. It is written by Mike Kersjes and Joe Layden, and Mike Kersjes is the teacher in this book, or he's the main character, and at the beginning of the book, he gets the idea to send his class to space camp. Let me give you a brief thing of the setting. Mike teaches special education in Michigan, and this book is, or the timeline that this is in, is about 1988 to 1989. And in the world of special education back then, this was before the concept of IDEA. It's an acronym that stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and this is definitely before the No Child Left Behind concept, where back in 1988, students with special needs were not in regular classrooms with their non-disabled peers that they are now. They were more put in the back of the classroom, or the back of the school, or in the basement, like Mike's class is. And he doesn't like that idea, but he figures, okay, this is kind of how it is. And in the beginning, he, like I said, he develops the idea to send his kids to space camp. And he is laughed at by his assistant teacher, a woman named Robin, but she's like, oh, these kids can't really do anything like the core, they can't even pass the core standards or the tests, the state standard tests that they're required to pass. How can they go to space camp, which is a facility more for children with advanced intelligence? And he kind of brushes that away, and he contacts the space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, and he gets in touch with a Dr. Barnhart, and she tells him that, oh, we really unfortunately don't have anything for children that you teach or children with disabilities, but if you want to set up or create a proposal for your idea, we'll read it and we'll consider it. And he understands, or Mike understands, that she's just kind of humoring him at this point, and that she probably won't read it, but he develops a proposal anyway, and he sends it to Dr. Bernhardt, and weeks go by, and a month goes by, and she does not respond, even though he calls her numerous times and asks, have you been able to see our proposal? What do you think about it? And she's like, well, we're really busy. We haven't been able to read it. So he then takes the idea into his own hands and contacts a man named Henry, who was a Michigan congressman at the time, and also head of the space program, or space center in Washington, D.C. So he was really into the space program and really into knowing what is required for this to happen. And so Paul sets his strings in Washington and finally gets Dr. Bernhardt to read his proposal. And she contacts Mike and Robin and says, okay, we like your idea. Why don't you meet down with us and we'll hash this out? And so Mike and Robin make numerous trips to Huntsville, Alabama, and also to Houston for different teacher conferences and different meetings to develop this space camp idea. And at first, the students in his class, who range in disability from, there's one with Down syndrome, there's multiple ones with autism and ADHD, and I think there's one with even Tourette syndrome. So there's a very different and very kind of mixture of disabilities in his classroom, as there are many different special education classrooms. But initially they're kind of like Dr. Bernhardt. They're like, wait, isn't this for smart kids? Isn't this for, kids not like us? But then Mike gets them involved and interested, and so they start to really try, and Mike's like, this is not an easy task, as you can imagine. This is going to take many months and a lot of money, and it ends up being, I think he needs to raise like $50,000 in order to do this. And so they create ideas, similar to fundraising. Like they try to have bake sales, and they try to have car washes and things like that, and that raises a little bit of money, but not very much. And so Mike is kind of hopeless with this, but he's telling the kids that, oh, we're going to get it, and he tries to get donations from other charities, and unfortunately he gets rejected a lot. But what happens is that some of the kids in his class, because he teaches high school, are the kids in his class, also a couple of them work at the local Burger King, and the manager of the Burger King hears about this base camp from his employees or from these kids, because they're really excited. And he meets with Mike and says, why haven't you come to me for this? I'll help you. And he gives him the $50,000 plus some, I'm sure, to help fund this. And so now Mike is really excited and really thinks, okay, this is actually going to happen, because now we have the money and we're learning how to do these advanced technological space things. Like they have to go into a virtual mission, and they have to create a tetrahedron underwater, which they do. They do all these practices for numerous times, and throughout the book, bad things do happen, and while they practice, because again, it's a typical practice, try again type thing. But they end up doing it, and they end up completing like the tetrahedron underwater. I really liked that part, and they understand different missions, and they learn to build rockets and things like that. And then they eventually go to space camp, and they're welcomed there, and they're somewhat treated differently from the other kids, but or by the other kids, but they hold firm, and they end up doing it, and they end up doing very well. And I won't spoil a lot of this for you. That's basically the main plot. But I really loved it, and not only on just a general love, oh, this is a kind of a, kids with a difficult disabilities and not very intelligent on kind of any like IQ scale or anything like that, but they're able to conquer that problem and to do great things. But I also studied special education, and I also hope to be a special education teacher. And so this was really uplifting for me, because it proves that even though you have a disability, you can still do great things. And you'll countlessly be amazed at what these kids can do, and their conquering abilities, and despite their disabilities. And this was made into a Hallmark movie that aired, I guess, at the beginning of this year, which starred John Corbett. And I was able to watch the movie, and again, I didn't cry when I read this book, but I'm not much of a crier, but I was almost brought to tears by seeing it done in kind of Hollywood standards, or seeing it be completed as what it was like to read this book. So I highly recommend it for both teachers of students with special needs and anybody else. One of the things that I didn't like about this, and it was just kind of a nitpicky thing, is that one of the things that they teach you in when you're doing education, and especially when you're working with children with special needs, is that they tell you to put people first. And an example of this is to say, instead of the mentally retarded kid or the disabled kid, to put, because that automatically puts them as this label and labels them as that they wouldn't be able to do anything or because of this disability. You put the purple, or the person first, excuse me, where instead you would say this child with mental disabilities or mental retardation, or this person with learning disabilities. And unfortunately, because this was written in the late 80s where they didn't necessarily do that, they have words like the retarded kids or the disabled kids, but hopefully you'll get through that and get past that and really enjoy this book. So that's it for the book review this week. Next, I'm going to continue the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, and read the third book, which is called The Wastelands. So that's it, and I bid you all farewell and happy reading.